Welcome back to Fast Monty's Garage. Today we're going to discuss QuickTrick Alignment's new Gen 5 do-it-yourself alignment tool that measures caster, camber, and toe, front and rear, and doesn't matter what vehicle you have, it'll work. And we're going to go over that in detail today. If you're brand new to the channel, my name's Mike. Welcome. I'm just a DIY guy doing my own work in my home garage. Yeah, I have a lift in my garage. The reason is I appreciate good tools to help me get the job done faster and correctly. When I restored this GTO, 69 by the way, over 10 years ago, I came across the QuickTrick alignment tool because I was on a roll. I did everything myself. I even painted it in my garage, rebuilt the engine, etc. So when I came across this tool, nothing existed on the market to do it at home. Not only that, but you can take it to the track and measure your settings, make adjustments. It's super portable. Now, I get a lot of comments of, why would I do that when I can just go to the local alignment shop and, you know, pay my $119 and get an alignment done? Well, if you have a 2012 Altima and you only get the alignment done once every 5 years, knock yourself out. Now, if you're like me and you like having the right tools for the job, you have a sports car or a truck that you drive hard, or you have modified suspension like I do, and I'll show you the side view in a minute, it's very important that you get your settings right. Now, for me, I used to have an E46 M3, and please share a story if you have one. But when I dropped that car off, it was also highly tuned suspension-wise, custom camber caster plates in the front, coilovers everywhere. I took it to an alignment shop. I dropped it off, gave him my specs, came back a few hours later. When I was getting dropped off, I caught the service tech fishtailing with my car out the driveway. What? Yeah, so needless to say, my alignment was free that day, and I never went back. So ever since that day, I don't trust anyone with my cars. Can you imagine that? Leave a story if you have one below, so we can all have a good laugh. Now, today's episode, like I said, it's all about how to use this tool. I have several other episodes where how to fix your caster and camber, especially on old school muscle car. Speaking of which, my whole channel is about working on this car. So if you have a muscle car, consider subscribing. And I also added the join button. The join button's there to help support the channel. Any proceeds from that join button helps buy new parts, new projects for the car. So thank you in advance for considering that. Now, moving forward, I'm going to show you exactly how to use this tool. If you have any questions, leave a comment below or hit up QuickTrick Alignment's website. Speaking of which, I also have a discount for you, 10% off. QT Monty, plug that in as your discount code, 10% off anything on that site. And if you were wondering what's the difference between Gen 4 and Gen 5, it's these string alignment tools they've added. So if you have a Gen 4 product, it's a nominal fee to upgrade to a Gen 5. Go hit that when you can. But we're going to walk through how to use every aspect of this tool, and especially tips and tricks that I've learned along the way that may not be in the instructions. I will show you those tips and other tools you can get to help you out. Let's go and mount this on the wheel and show you how this works. All right, there's a side view, stock GTO, modified GTO. Yeah, my car is super low. I love the twisties, I love autocross, I love road racing. Suspension is super important to me. That's why I have this alignment tool. Now, I also have the worst case scenario when it comes to doing toe settings or doing our string alignment, because I have staggered wheels. My wheel widths are different front to rear, and so is my track width. So we're going to walk through that when we go through the string aligning portion to go over the toe settings. But let's go ahead and tackle the front wheel and show you how to set this thing up. Before we jump into this, a few things to discuss. One, read the instructions like 18 times. It'll help you immensely. If you want to go to QuickTrickAlignment.com and download the latest instructions, you can do that too. Now, saying that, there's also specs that you need to be aware of, and it's different per car. You have to research what your spec should be or what your ideal spec you want it to be, right? Now, QuickTrick can help you with that on more modern cars. On an older car, you're gonna have to research the suspension you went with. Like I have all Global West. They want specific specs for caster, camber, etc., just for standard driving. Autocross is different. I take a couple degree off the fronts. But anyway, moving forward, we're going to measure this. Caster first, camber second, and toe is last. Now when we measure caster is actually the angle of your steering knuckle, the upper and lower ball joint. It's that pivot or the angle of measurement as it relates to your driving. So positive caster is actually back like this, negative caster is in the front. So we're going to measure that first. And the best way to do that, you need a way to pivot the wheels. So QuickTrick Alignment has these super heavy duty steel ball bearing swivel plates, which are fantastic because you can drive onto them. The reason that's important is your suspension needs to be fully loaded. Now, the other way you can do this is you can jack up your car, you can put plastic bags underneath it if you have a flat surface, but you have to fully load that suspension and make sure that suspension is settled before you do any measuring. So let me go ahead and install these underneath the front wheels, and then we can attach our equipment. Okay, now that I'm set, this is the beauty of this system is this is a power steering car, and I can manually rotate the tires. How awesome is that? Yeah, it's awesome. Okay, so this kit, the plates also come with a gauge, and you can slap it right on there. It's a magnet. You can take a dry erase mark and put a mark on the disc, or put some tape and Sharpie to mark where 0 is. That's how we get started. Now let's mount this kit up to the wheel and show you the options. If you choose to use the standard pin, you can actually put it in between the wheel and tire, like that, or like this. If you do that, and you have delicate lips like I do, then you want to put some painter's tape on there, a couple layers of painter's tape, because these are some sharp edges. You don't want to scratch that paint or chrome you might have on your lips. All right, grab your vertical bar. It's the one with this bracket on it. It's got the slot. The instructions, some can sometimes not be that clear, but what you need to do is take these bolts off, and the standard way is to mount your pin on the slot like that. And it is supposed to mount on the wheel. Well, I am vertically challenged, both ride height and my height, but I can't get this in there. So there's an option for that. If you're stuck, you can turn this upside down, which is what I do. And you can get pin extensions. So you can leave the rubber cap on there, and I can mount directly to the wheel, just like that. So I have plenty of room in between my fender and that top bar. So when you go ahead and do that, make sure you have one washer on the top pin, and then on the bottom, if you're using my method, take this nut off, and that's what mounts directly to the crossbar. No washer in between. That makes sure that our pin heights are perfect. So no washer in between. And now we can adjust and put this as close to vertical as we can. Not to worry, we're going to measure what vertical is. And then you take a bungee and you strap this to the wheel so it sticks just like that. Our next mission here is to make sure we're vertical on our, perfectly vertical on our crossbar here. So what we're going to do is get your scale out and turn it on, and it will zero itself out and will beep at you when it's at 0. So then you take that same scale and you put it on the vertical. Ha! I nailed it. It's actually 90 degrees. And that's exactly what you want to start the process. Now we're going to use the hole in the scale and the fastener that came with the kit to attach to this bracket. And this bracket, by the way, is a little loose. It's not super loose, but it's not tight yet. And I'm going to fasten this up. The reason is you want this gauge to be perfectly flush with this surface. So that's why I left some adjustability with the bracket. And once you get it perfectly flush, then you tighten both screws. Okay, we're about to get started. I want to give you guys some notes. If you have a modern car, I think it's anything after 1990, you have a strut basically that controls your caster. You probably cannot change your caster unless you have an aftermarket kit. Like my M3, I had to buy an aftermarket kit to relocate that caster for, the strut for caster and camber. So if you don't have adjustability, then don't worry about this process. But for those of us that do, including myself, including you guys with muscle cars that have shims to adjust your suspension, go check out my video on how to fix that. Now what we're going to do is measure it. So make sure your tires are off the same PSI, keeps it consistent. Make sure your steering wheel is straight. And we're going to go ahead and start with rotating to 20 degrees. If you have a scale that came with your swivel plates, otherwise figure it out, but you need to go to 20 degrees. We're going to reset to 0, rotate the other way 20 degrees, take the reading, multiply that reading by 1.5. Don't ask me why, some guy at MIT figured that out, and that's our caster. So let's get to it. All right, I'm just going to do this by hand. So rotate it to 20 on my mark down here, and reset the scale. I can't see, I don't have my glasses on. I want to wait for it to beep. That means I'm at 0. 20 the opposite direction. Bam, right there, bam. 3.3, awesome. So we need to multiply that by 1.5. That's a little over, that's almost 5 on the nose, which is my spec, 5 degrees. So we are good there. All right, camber is super easy. We take your scale and put it in front of your wheel on the flat surface. So it's right in front of the tire. I'm going to zero it out. Hear that beep? That means I'm zeroed out. And I'm going to put it right on the edge of the scale. You don't have to bolt it up, but just hold it against the scale. And there is your camber. So I keep moving it, but it says -0.9. My target is -1. That's close enough for me, but the arrow here, let's see if I can show you. I'm exaggerating, but see the arrows? One goes up, one goes down. So negative, down is negative, up is positive. And that's how you figure that out. All right, guys, the process of string aligning is very difficult. I did a video on that too, if you want to go check it out and be bored to death. But what you do, this is your car, this is a squared car, you actually run a string parallel on both sides of the vehicle, and then you measure from the wheel to the string. That's called string aligning. It's very difficult to set up those two pieces of string, especially if you have a staggered car. Let me show you how it's done with this kit. Now we can start stringing, they call it. Now your 4 wheel alignment kit comes with 4 of these bars, 4 sets of rulers. Each bar has a slotted ruler on one end and a non-slotted ruler on the other. Just put this on a table, lay it flat, tighten up that nut to make sure you're 90 degrees. But the thing you need to think about is these slots go towards the front of the car, and on the back wheel, they face the back of the car because we need to put our string in there. All right, not an optical illusion. I cannot get up there because of my fender, and it doesn't matter to me because I can't adjust the camber on my rear wheels because it's a solid axle car. Those of you that can adjust your camber, do the same thing you did on the front on the rear. And then after you do that, we're ready to do our toe settings, and you want to do your toe setting in the rear first and then adjust your toe in the front. So I have it set up. My slotted ruler is in the back here. If you have a squared vehicle, that means your wheels are the same size, front and rear, for width, and your track width are the same. That means your hubs, where your wheels mount, are also the same width, front and rear. Pick a number, say 3, on this slot, drop your string in, go to the front slot and put it on the 3. Then you'll be able to do toe in a second. But let me show you what you need to do if you're staggered. If you're staggered, you need to have the same setup on the other side, and you're going to measure the width from the outside of the bar to the outside of the bar in the rear. We're going to compare that measurement to the same technique in the front. Divide by 2, and that's going to get you your offset. As before we do our toe settings, I forgot to mention, my apologies, make sure your steering wheel is straight. QuickTrick Alignment has this really cool tool to lock your steering wheel in position. It slides up against the seat and the steering wheel, and keeps it in position. I added rubber hose on here because I have a wood steering wheel and it slips on the metal, but it comes standard with just the metal for most leather covered or rubber or whatever synthetic covered steering wheel you might have. So make sure your steering wheel's straight on a modern car. On older cars, make sure your pitman arm is straight, so it's facing perfectly forward or perfectly backwards. Lock your steering wheel in, and then you can measure your toe. The reason you lock it, because once you start adjusting your tie rods, you don't want the steering wheel to turn. Duh. Okay, now our steering wheel's locked. Remember, we dropped the line in the 3 slot in the back for a squared car where we have the same track width, front and rear, same wheel size. We drop it on the 3 in the front, and then we go to this back ruler here, and the line should be at the same point or really close to it. So if you use the inside of the line as, say, your starting point, let's say we're at 3. If your spec is 1/16 towed in, that means, sorry guys, that means this bar is out, or this way 1/16. You would actually be like this. So just inside the 3 line on that 15/16 line, like that. That would be for the squared vehicle, 1/16 towed in. If your spec is total tow, you actually divide that number by 2, and then that would be your target right here, inside the 3 line. For those of you that can change your rear toe, it's the opposite as the front, where we're using the 3 on the back ruler. If you want toe in, we're moving the ruler that way, so that your line would be, call it an 1/8 inch over on the 3, that would be an 1/8 inch toe in, or toe out. I'm exaggerating, but that's what it would look like. All right, for staggered car, remember we took the measurements from the the outside of each bar, front and rear. So the rear and then the front bar on the front of the tire to the front on the other side. We take the difference, we take that answer and divide by 2. Mine happens to be 1 3/16. So 3 is in the back. We have to add 1 3/16. So that's 4 3/16 right there. There's no slot for it, right? So I have to actually kind of pull it a little tight and put it on the number like that. Maybe give it a couple wraps. Lock it in. Maybe even put some painter's tape on there to make sure it doesn't move. Now we can look at our back ruler. Let's check it out. All right, give it a snap. Let's see where it is. 4 1/8. So it's 4 3/16 on the front. So 4 1/8 means the ruler is an 1/16 inch closer. That means the wheel is towed in by 1/16. That's my spec. Perfect. A few more things to cover real quick. After you're done with your toe settings, it's always good practice to remeasure everything, just in case that toe setting changed your camber. So keep that in mind. When you are using that slotted section and you take this nut off, be careful. Don't let go of that knob, because there's a doohickey in here that will slip down into the tube, and it's a pain in the ass to put it back there. Ask me how I know. No, since I use the crossbar on here, I took the crossbar off, I put the nut back on for storage. Super handy, and you can keep your pins on, because I love the carrying case. You can take it to the track, as I mentioned. The other thing is, bungees are included. I forgot to mention that, but when I said bungee that to your wheel, the bungees are in the kit, in every kit. If you are budget constrained, not to fear. They have several different options, like just buy the crossbar with the gauge, so you can do caster and camber. Start small, add to your kit. I also mentioned you can go to QuickTrickAlignment.com, use my discount code QTMonty, 10% off, but you could also go there to get alignment specs. So they do charge for it because it's a database you have access to. It's from 1960s and newer for non-commercial vehicles. That way, you can actually do alignments for everyone on your street. So anyway, if you guys haven't done so, subscribe if you haven't, especially if you have a muscle car. Join the Full Monty Club. And not to worry, I do keep my clothes on, but all members get access to exclusive videos and will be part of a group that can recommend next videos to publish for everyone else to see. So that being said, I hope you're driving it straight now. If you have any questions or comments, leave them below. And you guys know the drill. Build them fast. Drive them faster. See ya.